Hey folks, welcome to Guitar Daily. It's Nick Granville coming to you from Wellington, New Zealand. So I've seen a few videos out lately where people kind of talking about like what the pros do differently, and most of these are pretty good. You know what I mean? Like I've seen a good one recently from Timpierce and people like that. One from Rick Beato, people like that really know what they're talking about. You know, not just like amateur kind of level people spouting what they think pros do. I thought I'd kind of throw my hat in the ring and kind of what I think pros do differently, because I don't see the stuff discussed enough and kind of what it is. And there's three main things that I think pros prioritize that amateurs don't, right? And I'm talking from professional experience, because this is what I do. I play guitar professionally. It's all I've ever done for the last 30 years. And I do all kinds of stuff, play with orchestras, I do theatre shows, I work as a session musician, so I do a lot of recording work. You're in my studio right now. And I do all kinds of things, you know what I mean? So I'm coming at this from a pro's point of view. So there's three main things that I see that pros do that the amateurs don't, in terms of priority. And the first I'd say is like a real strong sense of rhythm. Like all the pro players I know prioritize rhythm over everything else. And we'll talk about that a little more and kind of ways to work on it, right? But rhythm is one. I would say dynamics is the second. I think a lot of pros kind of prioritize dynamics in a way that amateurs don't. Amateurs will play everything and it kind of comes out sounding really flat. Whereas the great players, and not all pros do all of this stuff too. I know some pro players who don't play very dynamically. But the good players, right? They really prioritize dynamics and make it like a big part of their musical expression. And I think that is one of the things that separates amateurs from pros. And the third thing I'd say is like a real priority of your guitar tone. Now, I know some amateurs who are really like, you know, kind of full on about their tone. You know, they've got 20 million guitar pedals and they've got to have this boutique pedal and they've got to have this and they've got to have that, without like kind of realizing that it's not the gear that makes the tone. I mean, yeah, the gear makes the tone, but do you know what I mean? It's what you do with that gear that makes the tone, right? So you could have a Strymon Timeline, the greatest delay pedal ever, in my opinion. And if you don't know what you're doing with it, then you're still not going to get a great result. And that's the thing that I notice with a lot of pro players. It's like they prioritize like their tone, and they'll make that timeline sing because that's what their job is. So let's go through a few of those things. So the rhythm thing. I see so many like amateur players kind of play, and they're playing stuff and the time is kind of all floaty. Do you know what I mean? Like that, where it's this sort of approach to playing. You know, and you see this all the time with internet guitarists too, right? How many times have you seen people on YouTube where they're not really playing in time? It's like this sort of thing. I'm not playing in time. I'm just noodling. But I'm pretending I'm playing some hip shit by going with my head. And I'm like, oh yeah, this is some deep meaning. No, it's not. Just play in time. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, so when you do that same thing, do the same thing, but tap your foot and kind of prioritize the pulse. So you see, out of those two examples I did, the first one is kind of how an amateur would do, where it's this floaty thing that doesn't really mean anything. And the second one had some kind of rhythm. Whether you agree that's good rhythm or not, it's up to you. But at least I'm trying to put something down, right? And that's one thing that I notice is a big difference between the way the pro players do it. You want to check out some really great people with rhythm, check out Rob Harris. Rob's awesome. Mark Lettieri's another one that I really like that plays with really good, strong, solid rhythm. Carter Arlington, really good, strong sense of rhythm. Charlie Allen, in the UK, Charlie sounds great, plays with a really strong sense of rhythm. And I think, and that's the thing, like, that gets me. Ella Feingold, you know, when I hear people play, that's the thing that appeals to me the most. Is like, how is someone connecting with that rhythm? Because if it's like it's really happening, you'll notice my head start moving. I'm like, yeah, I'm grooving. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be funk music. It can be blues, whatever, whatever style of music. If someone's really in the pocket, Tom Bukovac, you know, when I hear him play, it's like the groove is happening. You know, Guthrie Trapp too, another one that's a really good pocket player. You know what I mean? So yeah, the rhythm was one. Right, dynamics. So a lot of amateur players and some pro players too do this, but they play this way. Which, it all just sounds like, if I spoke like that, it would be like, hi, how are you today? Are you feeling good? Where are we going today? Are we going to the shops? You just wouldn't talk like that, would you? It's ridiculous. So why play like that? Do you know what I mean? To me, it's like... The expression comes from the dynamics in the phrase, right? A phrase does this rather than just flat line. And that's one thing that I noticed the pros do different than the amateurs. It's like this sense of kind of priority towards dynamics. And that can happen in lots of different ways. So it's dynamics within one phrase. You notice there I played a phrase that might have got softer, got louder in the middle and kind of came down. But we might do that in terms of how we shape solos too. So if we... maybe the solo will start really soft and build up to a big high point in the solo and then come down. Well, that can be dynamic too. Do you know what I mean? That there's kind of, it's shaped rather than just being random. But dynamics within phrases too. And then tone. What does tone mean, right? Well, it's an interesting thing because here I am holding the cheapest guitar I own. It's a Squire Strat made in Indonesia. It's actually a pretty decent guitar. This one had a crack in the wood underneath the bridge, so I've replaced it with a maple block under there, which made a huge difference to how this guitar sounds, I think. It's got a nice solid connection with the bridge. It's got 5 springs. It's essentially hard-tailed. It's not. You still have that spring noise, but you can't move the tremolo. It's rock solid. But it's a good sounding Strat. And I think one of the things with tone is, to me, it's like the pro players, the really good pro players, it doesn't really matter what gear people use, right? It could be a Fractal, it could be an amp, it could be just an acoustic guitar. I've heard Tom Bukovac just sitting around with that Gibson acoustic recently, and he sounds better than just about 99.95% of people. And it's just an acoustic guitar. Why? Because the magic is in the guy, right? It's Tom Bukovac that makes it magic. You give that guy anything and he'll make it work. Now, he has his preference for stuff, right? Certain amps, certain guitars, that kind of stuff. But I'm sure he can make anything work, right? And that's kind of my approach. So when I use the modeler, it's like the modeler to me is just another tool. It's the modeler is not playing the music, no more than the amp I'm using is playing the music. It's me and what I'm going to get out of that gear. And that's the thing with tone. Like, tone is a lot you touch. If I hit this, people say tone is in the fingers. I really believe that, at least a large portion of it, right? And I know there's some people kind of might debate that, whatever. To me, it's even then, you could say this guitar sounds different than, say, another one of my guitars. But this guitar, I will make this guitar work. Right, even though it's got the cheap, nasty pickups in it, it's a $200 Squire Strat. I'll make it work, right? I'll make whatever you give me work because that's what pro players do, right? My job is making sound, and so therefore it's like I'm gonna coax the tone out of it. If that's too bright, I'll go. I'll turn the volume down or turn the tone control down. I also know too that when you play a Strat, if you hit hard, Strats tend to kind of become ugly if you hit hard too often. So I find with Strats, a lighter touch, even lighter than I normally play, seems to work really well on Strats for me, because I'll make it work. And that's the thing with tone. It's not, yes, the gear helps. A buddy of mine used to say it was 80% in the player and 20% in the gear. He said just spend some money and get good gear and you're there. And so I prioritize that. I've always made sure I have good gear that works, that's set up, that that I can make music with. That's the 20% taken care of, and then I've worked hard to get the other 80% to some degree. And do I have the full 80%? Probably not. and I'm still working on it. And it's something I work on every single day, is like my tone. And that comes from your touch, right? And how you're going to kind of coax the notes out of it. If you hit kind of hard, you know, in an ugly kind of way, you get ugly. If you kind of make the notes bloom and you're you know. So anyway, you get the point. So I would say those three are the differences between a pro player and an amateur player, and what separates the two, right, is rhythm, dynamics, and tone. Right? So if you're wondering what to practice, you know, I hear people all the time say, what should I be practicing at the moment? I'm like, dude, rhythm, dynamics, and tone. Go there, right? That's the difference that will separate you from all the other amateurs, I reckon, right? And of course, you've got to know a bunch of tunes. I'm making some assumptions, right? I know some amateur players who are really killer, you know, too. It's not just necessarily that amateurs are all bad, but I think you know where I'm coming from with this. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. If you found this useful, please subscribe. I post every day on here. Please like. Drop me a comment below. Let me know what you think. Was this useful, or is this a load of crap? No, don't let me know if you think it's crap, because I have no time for negativity. But nonetheless, you know, let me know what you think in a constructive way. Thanks so much for watching.